searching history for buried classics. This is Lost Treasures of Gaming.
Welcome back to another episode of Lost Treasures of Gaming. I am one of your hosts, Sean Evans, otherwise known as Zion Tane.
And I am one of your other hosts, Sid Bolton, also known as Dirk the Daring, and I'm also your gaming archaeologist on the OMG Hour.
Yes, you are. And Sid, we have a personal friend of yours on the show this week.
Yes, we do. I actually know people that are in the game industry. It's amazing, actually.
Wow.
It's pretty interesting when you have somebody that you grew up with, went to high school with, and is in Brantford, Ontario, which is where I'm based out of, which is really certainly not a mecca for game development. So it's kind of interesting that someone from here is actually working on a pretty major franchise.
And who is your friend? Why don't you tell everybody who we've got today?
So today we're talking to Kristen Sych, and as I mentioned, Kristen and I grew up together, went to same high school. I've known him for a long time, and we'll talk to him a little bit about the games that he's worked on, and today in particular, we're going to be talking to him about Call of Duty Black Ops. Now, I know...
Now, wait a minute, Sid. That's not a lost treasure. What?
Well,
What's going on?
I know it's not a lost treasure in the traditional sense, selling 25 million copies, probably played by 50 to 75 million gamers worldwide. How could it possibly be a lost treasure? Well, my argument is this. First of all, a lot of people have probably forgot about the original Black Ops, because now, as of this recording, we've, of course, now gotten the third Black Ops game, and of course there's been many other Call of Duty games in between as well. So, Black Ops came out in 2010, so that's actually 6 years ago. So in a lot of ways, people have probably forgot about that game.
It's ancient.
I know. In terms of video games, it's absolutely ancient, so it's lost from that perspective. But one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Kristen onto the show was to give the perspective of someone who works on the cinematics. And because of other guests that we've had on the show, primarily we've had programmers, and we've even had some musicians and things like that, and a lot of video game designers, but we really haven't had too many people that have been focused on the art side of it. So I wanted to bring Kristen on to sort of bring that perspective to the show.
Excellent. Oh, I think that's a fantastic idea. It's always nice to see different sides of the game development process, and what better way to get that than from a personal friend of yours?
Exactly. So with having said that, let's talk to Kristen Sych about Call of Duty Black Ops.
Kristen, thank you so much for joining Sid and myself on the Lost Treasures of Gaming.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So you were the first cinematic director that we've ever had on the show, and I think the reason being is we should probably get this out now, is you and Sid went to high school together.
Yes, we did. Sid really, to be honest, was the one that really broadened my horizons on computers. He's kind of a legend around Brantford.
We need to know all the details about Sid. Tell us the stories. You know.
Well, I was a geek then, and I'm a geek now, so it's all good.
Well, yeah, you're in good company there, because my geekiness has never really gone away.
Yeah, that's true. So, of course, we're doing things a little different on this episode, Kristen. We normally talk to, people that maybe have developed old Lost Treasure games, but in this case, you actually worked on something that is far from a Lost Treasure. In fact, it's one of the most popular selling video games of all time, this particular one, and of course, one of the largest franchises in the world, and we're talking about Call of Duty. And I understand that you had a part in Call of Duty Black Ops.
Yes, I did. I was part of the cinematics team working on Black Ops.
And just to give people a bit of a background on you, now I know some of this, of course, knowing you for as many years as I have, and of course, it's great because whenever I get the chance to go to E3, I always appreciate crashing at your place. It's always
it makes it fun.
Absolutely. So can you just give us maybe a little bit of a background on yourself and how you ended up doing video games?
Yeah, well, I pretty much, it started when we were guys going to high school together. I guess we sort of bonded over computers and stuff like that. I was always into art, and originally went to Sheridan for it's an animation school because I wanted to go work for Walt Disney. I wanted to make the next Bambi and Snow White and all that kind of stuff. And so graduated there and, worked my way down into the States. Started in Austin, Texas, making videos down there, and then moved over to L.A. And while I was in L.A., I took, plenty of jobs. Never really working my way into the Walt Disney avenue, but while I was holding out hope, I still kept getting computer jobs. Back then, CD-ROMs were big. So I had jobs at studios working on CD-ROM games, educational games, stuff like that. And then, dabbled when the internet became big back in around 2000. Did some stints in some internet companies, always animating for that. So a large part of my career has just been working on the, animating for sort of more of a technical side of, entertainment as opposed to movies. And one thing led to another, and I was fortunate enough to get hired by Activision back on the Spider-Man series, working as a traditional animator, drawing Spider-Man. And from there, they were generous enough to give me a chance in the 3D department, and I've been there ever since.
And you started out with the Spider-Man stuff as well. Maybe not started out, but I remember you telling me about working on some of the enemies and doing animations for those enemies in the game as well. And not to get too far off topic, but your wife is also in the animation business. And I have to mention to everyone that I still tell this story because I find it interesting, is that, when you go to a restaurant and they have the table and you can draw things on the table, I got to tell you, when I go out with you guys, I feel so little because, of course, your wife is drawing Bart Simpson and you're drawing one of the many characters that you've created because you have a bunch of original stuff I know you've done as well, and you doodle on things. And the best I can do when I'm in that situation is draw Pac-Man. That's about all I get out there.
Yeah, props up to my wife, who's a very talented artist. I'm still in amazement just watching her draw.
Yeah, and she's worked on amazing stuff, but that's a whole... Maybe we'll get her on a different show altogether, but she's worked on some amazing things. But you have as well. So you worked on Spider-Man. There was more than one Spider-Man game that you worked on, as I recall.
Yeah. Yeah, I started with Ultimate Spider-Man and worked on Spider-Man 3 when it came out, and then the Spider-Man, what we called Red versus Black, was, I cannot remember what they call it, but we always refer to it as Red versus Black. From there, yeah, that was a delightful project. I enjoyed that very much. And then from there into the Call of Duty series.
And when you started working on Call of Duty, had you heard of Call of Duty before? Had you, was this new for you just personally, or what was your history of Call of Duty?
Activision or Treyarch at that point was producing 3 projects at once. So one of them was Spider-Man. One of the other teams was the Call of Duty series, and they were a bunch of very smart people. So I was sort of folded into that at the end of Spider-Man.
And so your involvement on Black Ops, was it less about animating now and more about directing cinematics, or how did the transition work for you, and sort of what exactly did you end up doing?
I was classified as a cinematics animator. So basically the long and short of it is when you stop shooting people, that's when the cinematics team takes over. So it's a lot of the in-game cutscenes. It's a lot of things that happen, vignettes within the game where you're looking at either somebody doing a really cool takedown maybe that's very original, or just a plot exposition. That's the job of the cinematics team. And as an animator on that, I was assigned certain levels and basically, all the cinematic sections of that level had my fingerprints on it.
So what goes into actually animating or creating these cutscenes for a video game? Like, are you using the same character assets from the game, or are you creating them in a completely different tool from the game development engine itself?
The oversimplification is that we are using assets that have already been created. That's about all I can say.
Okay.
It's a secret.
No, that's fair. I'm like, I mean, what kind of, I have a question in my head and I can't seem to put it together.
Well, I was just going to say when you mentioned earlier when the shooting stops, you're not talking about the shooting in the game. You're talking about the motion capture shooting, I would assume.
Well, no, I'm talking about when you stop killing enemy soldiers and somebody starts talking at you. That's a cinematic.
You were talking.
That's where we come with.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
And so, how much input do you end up not having any creative input in terms of how things go with a scene, or do things sort of evolve as you're working on something and you think of something, and like how does that process work, or is it all pretty much laid out for you and then you just sort of follow what's given to you?
Well, they start with an initial plan, but Treyarch is a very good organization that basically they hire talented people, and so they are willing to listen to feedback. That being said, directors have the ultimate worldview of how all these pieces fit in, whereas down on a maybe an animator like myself level, I only see a certain piece of the puzzle. So whereas I may have suggestions on how to do something, it ultimately resides with, is this good for the game?
Right. And is it weird, like, sitting down, and do you sit down afterwards and actually play the games and see your work and the final product, and how does that make you feel?
I do play the game every now and then. It's a weird feeling. I think every artist goes through this, that there's a saying in the art world that art is never finished, it's just abandoned. I think Michelangelo came up with that, or Leonardo, somebody like that, one of the Ninja Turtles. But that there's a lot of stuff when for me personally, when I've created something and I see it working in the game, there are certain performances that you look at it and go, I know what I wanted it to be. A lot of people, they see it and it's good in it, and then there are things that I'm very proud of, and then there are other things where, like, I can only see flaws, where I wasn't a good enough animator to overcome problems.
But it's probably something that those of us that aren't animators would probably not even notice. Would you not agree?
Yeah. I would agree with that, but I think with any profession, you ask writers, about books they've written, and, they will only be able to tell you about the flaws, the things they wanted to say and couldn't say. I think with any creative profession, and even a lot of, engineering and stuff, people get lost in, if you've created it, you may not see the final product, you only see the process of getting to the final product.
Right. And is there anything that, I know it's been quite a while since Black Ops came out, and I know that myself, I actually, I've had a sort of an interesting past playing-wise with Call of Duty games. I've sort of gone backwards in the series. It was one of those things where I'd always known about them. I knew what they were about. I had seen them pretty much all, but I hadn't actually gotten really into them. And so I started out, my first Call of Duty that I finished was actually Ghosts, and then I started working my way backwards. But of course, when some of the newer games came out, Advanced Warfare and Black Ops 3, I had to play those sort of when they came out. But I've been gradually working my way backwards and forwards through the series, so I've been playing them in a completely disjointed order. But I recently did actually just play and finish Black Ops, and I absolutely had a blast. And when I say that, I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, of course, because I found the game was so full of awesome explosion moments. It was almost like watching a Michael Bay film. If you like those, some people like that sort of stuff, some people maybe don't, but I can honestly say that the game was completely full of action. There was many moments in the game that surprised the heck out of me, and I had a really, really good time. Is there anything, and going back to what I said earlier, I know it's been a long time since you've played it probably, or even looked at it, or most likely even thought about it, but is there anything that stands out from that game for you that you worked on that was sort of a great moment, or something that you're particularly proud of?
There's several moments. It's surprising how easily this stuff comes back, because it was a large part of your life, a very intense part. So you can recall it fairly easily. There are several moments that I'm very, very proud of in the what we call the POW level. There's a section where they're playing Russian roulette,
Yes.
which I had a large part in, and that was a very memorable experience, dealing with just a lot of people to make sure this came off flawlessly. It was sort of, there are moments where you sit there and go, how are we going to do this? And nobody has an answer, but you just keep sort of moving forward. I think what we came up with was a very nice piece, and that, again, that was owed to a lot of people that just put in a lot of sweat on that. So I'm very proud of that part, and even the part in the, just subsequent to that is when you're flying around in the chopper.
Mm-hmm.
I very much enjoyed, again, working with the people that I got to work with on that. There were a few of us that really, pushed hard to put this thing together. And, I owe a lot to them, because it was just inspirational working with them to get this thing going.
And what has it been like for you coming out of, you really were starting out in animation in a more traditional sense? I remember in high school you actually, drawing things on gas paper.
Yeah, I was the geeky guy drawing superheroes all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And
occasionally I remember, before all that life drawing training I had, how bad my superhero drawings must have been.
No, they always had a unique style, just like you do. So it's that part for me always will stand out. But what's it been like to go from using sort of pencil and paper, and now obviously you're using computers more and more to do things, and now the technology has changed tremendously from when you first started. How do you feel about that? Is there anything in particular that sort of stands out in your mind as something that just blew your mind in terms of an advancement in animation? And how do you feel about it as someone who started literally with pencil and paper, and now pretty much probably every day just works on computers?
Yeah. It's interesting once you get over the learning curve, because there's the tools that you work with are infinitely more complex than just pencil and paper. What I like about working in the computer and with in such a discipline as this is that, because of the technology, because of how you're working, you start getting into a very forward-thinking, anything is possible kind of feel. I mean, and traditional animation is always going to be very special to me, but it's almost a feeling of, you're looking backwards to Walt Disney and, Chuck Jones and Bugs Bunny, and can I ever be as good as them kind of thing. Whereas with this new technology, it's like, okay, we've done this much, what's the next big thing we have to do? And that just, if you can get used to working with the computers and such, I find it a very liberating kind of feel.
Sean, did you have any questions for Kristen you wanted to ask him?
Yeah, I was just, I was wondering, like, most cutscenes in games are, they're not super long, they're a few minutes long each. And I'm curious, in a single particular scene, how much time and effort goes into creating just one of those scenes in a game?
The simple answer is a whole heck of a lot. It's equivalent to working on a like a Michael Bay film, like a big time blockbuster cinema. There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot riding on these scenes. There's going to be a lot of people all over the world looking at these scenes. So there's a lot of time and effort and sweat put into making these things as good as they can possibly be.
Right.
It's very. I would venture to say there's not one frame in the cinematics where somebody went, yeah, that'll do.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that. And once you get, I mean, I'm sure you create you've got the storyboards and you know what you need to create. Once they're created, and then they kind of put the game together, how much, do you find there's scenes completely cut out, or how does the editing then go? Once you see it as part of the game, do people look at it and say that doesn't quite work, we need to revamp something?
Yeah, there's always that. It's because in art there's no real right answer, and it's kind of an organic process. You do as much due diligence as you can beforehand to plan the stuff out, but because of programming restrictions, because of just an idea that you thought was going to work that doesn't, there are going to be cuts. Everything is about the final product, and that's it can be painful at times that something you really thought was, the best thing you've ever done, just because of the needs of the game doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And, it can happen. It's part of it, but that works in film. I've heard of so many actors whose entire performance ended up on the editing room floor.
Yeah.
It's part of the process that I think every creative professional has to go through.
And what about, speaking of films, and of course, films and video games have become so intertwined isn't the right word, but they've, certainly video games have become a lot more like movies. I don't think that the same can be said for movies, right? But I guess in some ways, because movies have a lot more animation in them than they ever had before. But when scenes are cut and when ideas are cut in a movie, we end up seeing them in an extras disc as specials that, it's like, here are the deleted scenes from this particular movie. You never see that in video games. And I don't know if it's, I think about it sometimes and I realize that, maybe, like you said, maybe it just doesn't fit anymore, but it kind of makes you wonder why we don't get a chance to see that stuff, even if it's understood that it wasn't part of the game and it was taken out, or maybe it's because the idea will be held over and used in another game in the future, and you don't want to reveal that. But do you have any insight as to why that has happened? It's not just with what you've worked on; it's with all video games.
Yeah, I think my theory would be, and this is my theory, is because when cutscenes and stuff go in, there's a lot of software engineering support. If a decision is made that, whatever I'm working on doesn't work anymore, production stops on that particular scene and goes on to something else. So that scene is, half done, and wouldn't look like anything, perhaps, if, like you said, if we had a fabled extras disc, these, like I said, these scenes take an awful lot of effort to get done. If every frame has gone over and over and over again, if a decision is made to cut something, work is stopped.
So basically, whatever was there would essentially be unusable or unwatchable or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of a film, you shoot the actor on the film, you will get a performance because it's,
right. It may not
there.
have all the special effects.
And so it may not have all the special effects, but you have the essential actor there, lit and looking, fabulous, and that, so you can at least watch the performance. In a video game, it's not just me; it's a team of people taking what I do and making it work in the game. And so, if they say, Kristen, that's not going to work anymore, then nobody's going to, go the extra distance to make sure it works the way it's supposed to work.
Right. You just cry in the corner and then move on.
Yeah. Well, this is really fascinating stuff, Kristen. This is awesome. We've never had
this. Need looking at this whole thing.
Yeah. We've never had this take on a video game before, so it's interesting to hear all these stories.
Yeah, and I mean, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say it's a labor of love, but labor is the first word. There's a lot of sweat that goes into it, and if you're attached to absolutely everything you do, you're not gonna have a lot of sleep.
Yeah, and I mean, I imagine does it take you like months to do a couple of minutes, or like is that? I mean, I don't know if you can tell me that kind of ratio, or just give me an idea how much time and effort it goes into different scenes, or does it really depend on the situation?
It can vary. Generally, it does take. It's not something that can be done in a day.
Right.
Mainly because of, like, again, the various departments that have to look at this stuff and have to put in their time to make this thing work. So, yeah, it is usually, any one of these scenes is a long process.
And the one thing I know that, I remember us talking about when I've gone to visit you in person is, and it seems to be an interesting thing, and maybe it's one of those things that's, as an animator, drives you kind of crazy, but lip syncing seems to always be sort of a bane of everyone's existence, and I don't know if that's gotten better over time with better motion capture technology, or I just want to hear your thoughts a little bit about that and how it's sort of evolved over the years from your perspective.
From my perspective, lip syncing is there's two parts to it. One is the performance you capture. But then the second part is the eyes of an experienced animator looking at it.
Right.
Because it just, to shoot it and then just put it in will always feel like there's something lacking. You need an animator, a good set of eyes looking at the performance and saying, okay, what do we have to do to make the viewer believe that this is a live person?
So are you physically animating the face and the lips to coincide with the words being spoken?
Some of the time, yes. Some of the time, it is a performance capture base. But again, when you look at a video game, it's different. Or a cartoon, it's different than looking at a real person. There's just something instinctive in anybody's head that can recognize an actual physical person. When you look at a video game and, the rendering technology is fantastic and blows me away, but there's something still at the back of a person's mind that can register this is not a 100% real.
Right.
So because of that sort of gap, an animator has to work with the performance that is captured to convince the viewer that, no, this is real.
And how do you handle localization? Like, is it you don't change the cinematics for the localization, or do you?
That is out of my control. I know a lot of people that work on that, but I have no dealings with that section of the production.
Because I've always kind of thought that, like, it's kind of, I've never really listened to an alternate dialogue track in a game to know whether it's kind of like, when we watch sort of the bad Japanese films and things like that, and we joke about how the lips and the words are not matching up when they've been overdubbed or whatever. And I just wonder if that happens with video games, because I don't believe, but I could be wrong, or at least in most games, that they would redo the cinematics for each language. That would be tough, right? That would be a lot more extra work. Now, just to just get, this is just totally off topic. I don't even know if you know anything about this at all, but one of the games that recently came out was Quantum Break from Remedy Games, published by Microsoft. And one of the things about that game that's kind of interesting is they have a live action component in there, and the live action changes based upon what happens in the game. And of course, a lot of that already has been happening today in cinematics, but I just wondered what you thought about that sort of blending of, sort of decisions and letting the user kind of control the cinematics or what you see on the screen, and what, not as a gameplay element, but rather as something that you sit back and watch. And I just wanted to know what you thought of that kind of thing, and if you think maybe we'll see more games like that. This is just this is not asking you what you're working on, but this is just what you think in general of the industry, if that's where maybe things will go, or what you think about it personally.
I've seen a little bit of work with that. I think it's viable. I think it's very interesting. With any game, Call of Duty, any other game, it's a series of stylistic and storytelling choices. That kind of thing works for them. I think it works very well with what they're doing. Do I see everybody doing it? I don't think so, mainly because every team is a collection of individual people and opinions, and every team will say, well, we want to do things this way. Right. So, it's like, not every film is a comedy, not every film is an action. They just, this is stylistically what they want to do.
Okay.
Now, in your, in the stuff you've worked on, a lot of games these days too are using what they call the in-engine cutscenes. So it's like I think of games like The Witcher 3, for example, where every cutscene is literally your character. It's not actually a separate animated piece. I would assume, and I don't know for sure, but I would assume like the cutscenes in things like Call of Duty are separate pre-animated cutscenes, whereas things like Witcher was an in-engine cutscene. Is there a big difference between the two styles of cutscenes?
My own opinion, no. It comes down to the individual talents of the team. Either one for me wouldn't be a deal breaker. Okay. It's how people approach and use the tools they're given.
All right, is there any other interesting stories you want to tell us, maybe about the time you had working on getting back to the first Black Ops again? Mm-hmm. Anything that sort of stood out to you as a story that you could share with us today, or anything that happened during the development that gave you a chuckle, or something that was interesting insight that you weren't expecting along the way?
I think my biggest takeaway and just my fondest memories are the fact that nobody really lost their minds when working under production conditions. And production conditions, in video games, in cartoons, television, movies, can be very intense. This group of people just had a great time doing it. I don't recall any late night shouting matches. I don't remember anybody slamming doors. Everybody was just in it together. And it was great. We had conversations about sports, about eating. Apparently a lot of us like to eat. And so,
that's good.
Yeah, we just had, it doesn't hurt. But it was sort of just these conversations and just silliness sort of fit in and around production schedules, which is just, one of the most charming things is, being at work, trying to get something done, just huddled around a monitor with a few other people, seeing if it's going to work or not. To me is just one of the most charming memories, not one, but a lot of charming memories for me.
Were you on the entire game? Like, was it a 2-year cycle, a 3-year? Like, do you remember how long it took? I know it probably seemed like forever.
Yeah, it took a while. I know I was on it from beginning to end. So I was on it when they announced what we were going to do, and was pretty much on it until they said, okay, we're done. It's going in the box now.
Right.
So I'm very proud of the fact that, I was in on the ground floor and got to leave when we shipped.
Right. Yeah, because that often doesn't happen in this industry for sure.
Oh yeah, there are, I've been on other projects where I come in halfway through at other companies, but this was fun because it was the whole worldview start to finish.
Now, we always ask people at the end of the interview if there's any place, like if they're on Twitter or Facebook or wherever, where people can find them. But since you're sort of a behind-the-scenes kind of guy, I would imagine you don't do too much of that. I mean, I know that you're on my Facebook, for example, but is there anywhere people should go to check out anything, or just go to the Activision website to see what's happening with Activision, or what would you suggest people do if they want to find out what's going on?
I would suggest the Activision website and the Treyarch website would be about the best. Those of us who work on it, it's a collaborative process. So, it's very hard to raise your hand and say, hey, I'm responsible for all of this.
Right.
The best worldviews can be found at the Activision website and the Treyarch website.
Okay.
Excellent.
And we'll include those in the show notes, of course. Sean, is there anything else you wanted to ask Kristen?
No, I think this has been fantastic. Kristen, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you very much. And Sid, it was good to talk to you again. And Sean, it's very nice to meet you.
And you as well.
To e-meet you, yes, exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, Sean, the next time Kristen's in this neighborhood, we'll all get together and we'll have a beverage or something like that, and we'll talk about this experience. So that'll be a good thing. Well, thanks,
Promise
Kristen,
me a chicken wing, and I'll be right there.
That's right.
Nice.
I know where you like to eat too, so that's all good. And thank you for your contribution to the Black Ops games. They definitely are very popular with people, and I know a lot of our listeners would have played them and certainly enjoyed them. And I know for myself, like I mentioned, I finished the first one, so I'm looking forward to the second one. I've already finished the third one, so again, I'm doing it in kind of a strange order. I'm doing it 3-1-2, but that's okay. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to.
I'm just glad you're playing them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great franchise. So thanks again for being on Lost Treasures, Kristen.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
That was like almost like you walking down memory lane there with Kristen there, since you two grew up, and although he still didn't give us all the dirt on you from high school.
Yeah, that's true. He's really good at that. So I think his.
Is it more because you have more dirt on him? Is that the idea? Is that?
No, well, there's some stuff about Kristen I could tell you that that's kind of interesting, but he is definitely an artist. Let's put it that way. So. Always has been and always will be, and obviously it shows in his work for sure.
I like your story there when you were telling us about when you go to those restaurants with the paper on the table and they give you the crayons.
Oh, Sean, it was terrible.
And no, I could totally relate to you, because that's what I would draw too. I'd probably draw Pac-Man and a couple Power Pellets. You know what I mean?
I did, and then when I got really felt like I needed to sort of step it up a little bit, I actually drew some of the ship from Space Invaders and the bases. That was it. That's as far as I got.
And they're drawing these elaborate drawings.
The funny thing is the waitress looks down and sees an absolutely perfect Bart Simpson, because Kristen's wife Siobhan, she's worked on both Family Guy and The Simpsons. And when she drew Bart that particular night in question, I was just like, my gosh, that's perfect.
She needs to sign it and you rip it off the table.
I know. And she says, well, I drew him for, every day for over a year. So of course it looks good. And I was just like, okay. And then, the waitress comes by and she just sort of looks at the table, and far from being impressed like I was, she was just kind of like, animators. She just,
oh, are you serious?
So used to it, so used to people in that area that, because they'd see that kind of stuff more often in California.
Oh, so this is when you were down there with them.
Yes, I was down there with them. I was visiting one of my trips to E3. So, that's one of the reasons why I love E3. The video games are great, but I get to socialize and hang out with them and whatnot. So it's always been interesting. And sometimes one time Kristen actually many years ago, probably before things were so tightly securely controlled as they are today, but he sort of I got a little bit of a insight into where he works and things like that. And of course that kind of stuff happens, I think, less and less today. But so it's been definitely interesting having him as a friend in the industry, although I have to tell you, so tight-lipped. He never says anything about anything that he's working on or anything. So he's such a good boy that way. So I don't ever get any insight out of him from that, but it is fun to talk to him about the industry in general and sort of his work on it. So.
Oh, for sure. That's understandable. You can't talk about what you can't talk. That's in any industry.
Yes, that's true.
It's like I can't come home from work and start talking about what I'm working on at work.
No.
That's good. So totally understandable. And it was great having him on the show. So thank you for arranging that, Sid.
Yeah, no problem.
Before we head out, I would be remiss to not read an email we got last week from Lost Treasures of Gaming. And so Blake Bickerstaff says, this is regarding our Joe Jakir episode. He simply says, what an amazing episode. He has some of the most important knowledge about the history of video games, and I was hanging off every word. Thank you. So thank you, Blake, for sending us that email. That's wonderful to know that people do enjoy the episodes. And again, losttreasuresofgaming@gmail.com. If you would like to send us your comments on any of our shows, we'd love to hear them. So
especially good ones like that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So that is it for this episode of Lost Treasures of Gaming. Don't forget to check out gaminghistory101.com every Friday, as our friend Fred over there will create a video for you on the very game that we covered here on Lost Treasures. You can follow this show on Twitter at Lost Treasures OG, and I am Ziantane everywhere, and that is XIANTAYNE.
And Fred, you're welcome for finally having a modern game that you can play on gaminghistory101.com. You are welcome. You can find me on Twitter at Sid Bolton, that's Sid with a Y, and if you have a question for us or want to send us feedback, or if you have a recommendation for someone that we should interview for this show, you can send us an email, losttreasuresofgaming@gmail.com. And if you want to read the show notes, or if you want to find out about our other podcasts, or read game reviews, or do any of that other cool stuff, you can find all of that at omgnexus.com.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Be sure to also listen to the next episode of the OMG Hour for a preview of what we might be covering right here on Lost Treasures of Gaming. This has been an OMGNexus.com production.